Hello, everyone. It's May 16th, 2024, Helm Dev meeting, weekly Helm Dev meeting. Um, the call is being recorded, I'm obligated to say, so please respond as if that's the case. Someone want to drop the link into the docs if I don't get to it first?
I think I did that before you joined. I'll do it again. Oh, Matt just
Thank
did. Thank
you.
you.
Yes, perfect, thanks. Yeah, just so that it shows up on the recording. Appreciate that, Karen and Matt. All right, so we have one announcement. Do you want to go for that, Matt?
Sure. Helm 3.15.0 is out. Caveat is a bug, which is the first discussion point. But 3.15.0 is out. Okay.
Cool. I actually have a note for that. Are these other two agenda items below it related to that, or are they separate?
The agenda
that,
items?
Yeah, Windows ARM64. Those aren't related to the release, right?
No, those are not related to release. There's just
Okay.
The first one's the only one related to the release.
Okay, I'm asking only because I had something I wanted to note. I'll put my agenda item right below yours then.
Okay.
Right between those two because it relates to that one.
Okay.
Oops. Okay, great. You want to go ahead with your first discussion item, Matt?
Sure. It seems that there was a bug in the build. If you grab the version internally in Helm, it says 3.15.0-RC.2. Now, I went and I looked at it, and the issue is the right tag is passed into the build, but for some reason, and I can't reproduce this in my own Linux environments or anything, when the inside the make cross build where we do the cross compiling, or actually inside of the make file, I should say, we calculate what the tag is inside of there. We don't take something passed in. And when we calculate it, it calculated the RC2 version instead of the release version. Now, I have not been able to do this, but if I go look in GitHub Actions and the release, it's clear as day that it calculated a different version. I think it's the first time we've ever seen this, and I have no idea why it happened. It might be a quirk inside of GitHub because
Like
it was a release candidate.
Yeah,
but it's a release candidate, and so the release tag is pointing to the same. It's the two pointers to the same commit, and so somehow it picked up the wrong pointer. So what we ultimately need to do is change the release process so that we take in that passed in version and use that one instead, probably instead of calculating our own. Now the make script already handles this quite well. You just have to pass in a version, and so we just literally need to take the git tag and pass it in as an environment variable called version in the release GitHub action. And so if somebody wants to take that on, that would be fantastic. We can even do a 3.15.1 here, maybe next week, that fixes for the version inside. We can do a quick release or turnaround on that one. But if somebody wants to take a shot at a pull request for this, that would be great.
This is just in the big file.
What?
This change just in that make file, as you just said?
No, we probably can just make it inside the GitHub action.
Okay.
So in the action where you set the environment variable for version, we should be able to set that to the tag that is passed in from Git, whatever the reference
like just
is.
the ref.
Yeah, the reference that GitHub passes in.
Let me look at it. I think I can put some cycles this weekend on it.
Sweet.
Awesome.
That would be
but what's
wonderful.
our date? What's our ideal date for getting that out though?
Depends when we get it. Next Wednesday.
Okay.
I could review something on as early as either Monday night or Tuesday morning to look at it.
So then should we not merge 13.0 13.0.13? The PR
What's
that
13.0.13?
you made a PR to manually bump the version?
Hold on. Really?
Wait, I think that was you that made it, right? Yeah.
No, so sorry, this is one that goes on the main branch. So this is part of our release process. We
Right.
bumped
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
So what we do is, just for everybody here. So and this goes back when we create the release branch, we take the internal versions and we increment them for testing and everything like that. So that went to 3.15. That's merged and out the door in the release.
Right.
Then we
Okay.
take that and we cherry pick it back into the main or the main branch, and we just have to merge it there so it's in the continued flow. So this
Yeah.
has nothing to do with the release version. This is internal for testing and things like that, and we need it on the release branch. So this is already a released commit, and so we just need to pull it back into main. That's all it is.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. What I meant, I am aware of that. What I meant was, what I'm not aware of is, do any of the tests do a test based on the Helm version command? Because if so, they would fail at once you know what I mean? I just
No,
don't.
yeah, no. You can go ahead and merge this right away.
Okay.
Tests will still pass on main
Okay.
because
we
it
don't do a
just thinks
comparison between Helm
thinks
version.
it thinks it's 3.14. Main
Yeah.
just thinks
Okay.
it's on version 3.14. So I mean,
Yes,
if you want to
exactly.
go approve this and merge this, go ahead, but
Yeah.
it won't make
Yeah.
a difference to this because whatever change Rob does, we can go ahead and cherry pick over to the release branch and just cut a release that fixes it that way. Easy enough.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Merging now.
Yeah, and the nice thing here is we can tell people when this one goes out that the source code for Helm didn't change. This was just a build change, not an actual source code to Helm change.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So that's all I had on that one.
Thank you. Okay, so then I have a question. It may actually just be a statement that I'm making and not necessarily a question, but I guess I'm looking for a little bit of confirmation on this one. So I know the process for the milestone is to take, after the release, to take um, the items that were in the milestone, and the ones that didn't make it, to move them into the correct upcoming milestones. So I've been going through them and trying to, basically I realized that our common labels haven't really been applied consistently, like whether it's a feature or bug, a refactor, or what are the other ones? There's some other ones, right? So I've started to go through them and label them, and I've only, it was like, I don't know, like midnight last night or something, I started to do it. So I just did for the first 10 or so, but I'm planning on going through the rest of them and doing that, or tag teaming with someone else who wants to do that. So I guess that's my question, probably for you, Matt, because you've been kind of saddled with the release process for a while. Do you want to kind of offline that, or do you want to talk about how we can tag team that?
Well, I mean, I've just been moving them from one release to the next and occasionally pruning and changing a few of them. It has not been well groomed there, which is probably something we need. I won't have the time in the next month to really pair, but if somebody else wants to just go through and groom them, a lot of this stuff is pretty obvious. They shouldn't need me to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There are just a few things that were, that's right. There are just a few things that were non-obvious. And one of them is something that I wanted to ask you, because there was a long standing issue about, a long standing request for, that I think has been addressed pretty well.
Which one's that?
It is, let's see, I DM'd you about it, and we can also keep it there.
The Auras one. The Auras one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately this is very, very hard. Because it is a breaking change to the SDK.
Right.
It's a breaking change to the SDK.
Yeah.
And what a lot of folks think of is the only place we have to look for SDK users is on GitHub. So we identify a few projects who are doing that, but we forget there's a whole wide world of Helm SDK users that's not public open source code on GitHub, and we don't have good metrics on it. And so the breaking change is a hard part here. I mean, occasionally there might be a darn good reason to do it. It's almost always security, but otherwise you're supposed to increment the major version because this impacts people.
It does.
And
Yeah.
we forget that so often trying to move so fast. We really need to figure out the Helm 4 thing in the short term and get moving on that and merge it over there. But to do that, we have to deal with logistical issues first rather than roadmap issues.
Understood.
haven't done
Yeah, I
it.
totally
Like,
agree.
For this one, it's the fact that it's a breaking change that's a problem.
Yes.
And if we're going to make a breaking change, ultimately, and I haven't looked through this change, when we do it, we need to shield people from it. Like we have the cube package, right? Client Go was always making so many breaking changes. We
Yep.
shielded almost everything from people with the cube package, and
Yep.
we only have to make changes in one place when Client Go changes. We don't have to do it everywhere then. And I think the same thing should apply to this, where we can shield that so they become internal changes around whatever the hack happens there. And so we just need to do that well to shield folks and to shield our future support of this stuff.
I totally agree. Ultimately the question is, like, there is a provision in our backwards compatibility contract that
Which
that
provision?
SDK changes. I know I mentioned this to you, but I just wanted to say it in the meeting, is that like that we try our hardest, and we should. It's not necessarily a must to prevent like every possible occurrence of breaking changes for the SDK. And yes, we really want to help people. So for example, let's see. What I mentioned was in the like our backwards compatibility statement, we say we also, we're super strict on the CLI, right? But then we say we also try very hard not to change publicly accessible Go library definitions inside the package directory of our source code. And I was noting the try very hard part. I'm not trying to like say, let's try less hard, but we also say that we should remain backwards compatible within the package directory, etc. Right?
Where do you see this? So in the
I see
beginning, and
that
this is where I'll get into it. Yeah, like
the community,
right? It says
yeah,
where minor and patch releases must be 100% backwards compatible. That's under motivation. And backwards compatibility, that programs using the Helm Go API will continue to compile. So you're right, this gets into compiling.
yeah, yep.
And then when it says the following rules will apply to Helm minor and patch releases, exported Go APIs will remain compatible as per this article. The exception is Kubernetes APIs that do not allow semantic versioning, so Helm cannot enforce compatibility. And that article lays out a great deal on it, including things like our interface strategy. Like once you create an interface, you never can modify it because that's the Go project stance on it. You always must create a new interface, which is one of the things we want to clean up with Helm 4.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was looking inside of the contributing guidelines, but
no. So we have a very specific document on backwards compatibility here. It's a HIP that covers our backwards compatibility guidelines, not so much in the contributing guides, but here. And this is the one that I was looking at.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking into that Auras one, since Auras 2 changed how, essentially the authentication strategy there, the API, because I was involved in that PR as well, the API itself, I think there's some work that was done to ensure that the API doesn't change. The functionality did change in that the bit where authentication is through a Docker, is following the Docker strategy was a no-op. I believe there was at some point there was an error that was being thrown, but essentially that changed. It's a no operation now. Does that suffice as a breaking change? It will compile, the API doesn't change much, doesn't change at all, but the response is a no-op. Is that good enough? Or was
that's what I'm talking about. So I just dropped another link in here to the Go project's definition of backwards compatibility. And for them, that is not good enough because you're breaking the experience of consumers of the API. When that API used to provide functionality, it no longer does. That's a breaking change because an API isn't just the arguments you pass in, it's the contract of what you get in response to that too.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're making a breaking API change in the contract. You may pass something in, but now it doesn't work coming out.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately where the Go project says no, which is why we need to rev to Helm v4 and figure out the plan to it. And for that, we need to deal with the logistical issues, because the functionality issues, we got more than enough. That's easy to roadmap out. We've got to unblock the logistical issues to get started. And that's the work that we don't have enough time left to deal with today, but that's the stuff we've got to go deal with.
Yeah. You know, I was looking at the function signature, which is what you were, the issue that you really brought up, I think, the most, because that's like very obvious, right? You can't change the function signature of a public method. But what it really changes is it just, you know, I'm wondering if we can find a middle ground here where we don't change the function signature. All they really do is they change that initial parameter to an underscore, right? And we say, like, can we?
No, the function signature, it's the response to it. From one
Yeah.
point, you got a usable response. In the other point, you now just get an error saying it's no longer supported. That's the change. That's breaking.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I wonder if we can actually like kind of like temporarily support both version 1 and version 2. So if people, for the SDK, so if people do in fact pass that parameter in, we continue to use the SDK version 1. If they do not, you know what I mean? If they pass in a parameter that has,
you can have multiple versions of packages. That is one of the things, but
yeah,
we're not going to solve it here. We've only got a few minutes left.
Yeah. All right, well, I wanted to bring it up, and I guess maybe I wasn't doing a good job as a moderator here because I had a topic, so I'll
this is just one of those things where we have to look at the guides and then just the impact in consumers of this, right?
Yeah.
We are so fast to somehow just move fast and break things, but you know, it's like people keep telling me at big companies, you break my Helm usage. No,
right,
no.
Of course.
You just can't do it. You have to follow proper guidelines here, because we are used in so many places. We're used in proprietary products. We're used in open source projects. We're used in people's internal projects inside of companies. It's massive. It's huge. This is reliable, boring infrastructure software that just needs to work. And it's not a startup where you can move fast and break things anymore, no matter how much I would like to.
Absolutely.
Which is why we need to rev to Helm version 4 to handle this.
I will take an action item to follow up with you about the idea to find a middle ground where we can support both versions potentially, or we knock it to Helm 4. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So the next item, you have the next 2 items, and I'll cede my last item.
Oh, well, thank you. So I'll get into my next one. There's a PR to do Windows ARM64 support. We already do Windows support, but it's AMD 64. This is just to do ARM64 builds. It's pretty straightforward. And if I understand the news right, there's going to be a bunch of Windows ARM stuff coming and announced. And so if they're going to have a lot of Windows ARMs laptops, things like that, this may not be a bad idea. And so I just wanted to see if anybody had any objections to this. Like when it comes to bespoke hardware at this point, I don't really want to be one of those people to support it. But if it's going to hit mainstream here pretty quickly, then I'm more interested in it. So I'm wondering if anybody has thoughts on this.
My thoughts are, let's do it. Just right out of the box, I agree. Like, it's coming, and let's be, you know, we're not heading towards breaking something. We really just want to be there to support when it really launches. I agree with you, essentially.
Robert, you came off video here. You came off you turned your video on. Did you have something to say about this?
I don't know how to use Windows machine, so no.
You don't know how to use a Windows machine?
No. I use a Mac, and I work for a Linux company. Come on now, like, don't ask me to fix it either. So
oh, fine. All right. And then my next one we can cede to next week because we're running out of time here. We probably need to do assignments.
Okay. And Evans will do the same thing with yours, right? Okay, great. So in terms of HIP review, I think we're just pushing that one off for another week. Let's see. Let's go to assignments first, and if we can get back to the other things, great. Assignments, who wants to do moderator for next week?
I'll do it.
Great. And notes? Okay. I think I can do notes next week, so just put me for that. I can do notes next week. As far as issue and PR triage go, we have a group of 8 people that are helping us with that now, in addition to our normal folks. So you can put me down for PR review, and maybe I'll just make the note now that there are additional people, and we can list them when they want to list themselves.
I go in there every week, and I just in between my meetings, I usually go in there and look if it's something small. If it's something big, I'll pull it down and look at it. But yeah, I'm in there as well.
Awesome. And then shout outs. I'm gonna say thanks, Evan, for doing real quick. Thanks, Evan, for your continued work on this, and your patience around your work with the project. It's really great to see. Robert, it's really awesome to see you again, and just being at these meetings again and being involved. It's awesome. Yeah, and Matt, you're you're caring a lot, so appreciate that. And Karen, thank you for continuing to keep us on track, asking the questions about social stuff and timing and all that. Those are my shout outs. So it's the top of the hour. I don't want to hold anybody back from shouting out, but please add them to the doc if you feel like doing it after the fact, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.